Hello and welcome to a solo mission episode, maybe even the kickoff of a new side crisis, we'll call it. I think that's very clever to call it a side crisis. But as you can see, I am here alone wearing my Sunday bests to play some favorite games that I have from my favorite systems of all time. And we're going to start with the Sega Saturn. Not that it's my number one favorite system of all time, it's just that I've been lately on a huge Sega Saturn kick. We recently did an episode where I talked about this bad boy right here, the Saru, which is essentially an EverDrive for your Sega Saturn. It is really, really cool, works really well. I've put it through its paces, and then some. And I gotta be honest, it's a whole lot better than a lot of the alternatives that are out there for ODEs for the Saturn, optical drive emulators. It's like a third of the cost, and seems to work better because the loading times are insanely short. So yeah, this is a little side deal. Uncle Bob isn't with me today because, to be quite honest with you, he doesn't give a shit about old video games, except for maybe 4 of them. And you know what? It's about friendship is about caring for one another. And I would like to liken this to, I'm not going to sit here and torture my friend playing old Sega Saturn games, just like I wouldn't want to be tortured by him watching a baseball game, which is just sounds like the worst possible thing that you could do with your time. And maybe to him, playing Sega Saturn would be a really terrible way to spend his time. So here we are, in the throne room, we'll call this, by my lonesome, about to play some of my favorite video games on some of my favorite consoles. So let's get some stuff out of the way, some prop stuff out of the way. I'm going to be playing the Saturn today with this thing, which is a really cool 90s joystick called the Psychopad. KO. KO stands for knockout. So, missed opportunity. They could have put the KO in the word psycho, and they didn't. Which, come on. Mistake. But so, this is cool in that it's one of the better joysticks that was made in the 90s. It's got micro switches. You can probably hear that. It's probably really loud. Clicky stick. So, in America, we didn't have joysticks were the high-speed drizzling shits for a long time because they use, instead of micro switches, most of them used rubber membranes, which is not the way to go. So if anyone grew up playing on a power clutch, which is this Genesis 3 button, or even I used to own as a kid, I had the Naki, I think it was called the Hyper Dual, but it worked on Genesis and Super Nintendo. A terrible rubber membrane stick. The NES Advantage, also terrible membrane stick. In Japan, Sega released the Virtuous Stick, which was clicky, and to be honest, you need your joysticks to be clicky, people. That's the way this goes. Here's the box. Pretty cool, pretty explosively 90s, as you can see. It says it's right here. It's 10-in-1. Don't know how they get that math, but I think it has to do with all these crazy switches on here. So you have auto fire for all the buttons, and then up here, this area here, these are macro switches that you can program. You have these switches that allow you to adjust the speed of the auto fire, and you could program buttons, like make a button go, if you wanted for example, the R button to be the A button, you could do that. And there was really nothing else on the market at the time. This was made by a company called ACT Labs, ACT. And they used to advertise a lot in magazines at the time, but you would only find this stuff at a Toys R Us or, dedicated video game stores. You weren't going to typically find this at a Target or a Walmart. But it's pretty cool. Works pretty well. The other neat thing about it is that, so I have it obviously plugged into a Saturn, but it came with these other little leads here, as our friends in the UK call them. And so this one works for the PlayStation. It's I don't know if you can see that, but that's D-Sub 15, which, if you know, that's standard Neo Geo controller ports. So this one's for PlayStation, and then you can also hook it up to a Super Nintendo, as you can see there. So it's cool. It's a one joystick to rule them all. Feels pretty good, has all these features. Isn't, and this is most important, isn't a colossal piece of shit, as most arcade sticks from this era were. We didn't start to get good arcade sticks until the PS2. and that was due to our good friends Hori. They made really good joysticks in Japan for every system that you can imagine. I own a couple Neo Geo ones called their line was called the Fighting Stick, and you had all the clickies, all the buttons, all that good stuff. So yeah, this, to my knowledge, this is one of the first in America that you could get that kind of had good arcade adjacent parts, not full blown. This is not to be confused with how good joysticks are today with Sandwell parts and all that good stuff. So there was a joystick at the time that you could buy through magazines called the Mass Systems Arcade Stick. And that thing is a beast. I've seen one in person once. A friend of the show, Quan, has one, or had one. He probably traded it. But it was literally made of the same wood as an arcade control panel. It was massive. It weighed like 50 pounds, and it cost like $300. But it had all Suzo Hap controls. So it felt exactly, if you went to an arcade and played Street Fighter 2, exact same stuff in there. And you can play that on Super Nintendo, Genesis, all that stuff. So that was way out there, a dream that I never achieved. But I did get to play one, and boy, did it smell like a bunch of chemicals because of all the paint and the glue and, probably the 2+ decades of aging of all that stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because it's kind of fun. So first up on Saturnmania is one of my absolute favorite fighting games of all time. It's a real testament to how good Sega used to be at this stuff. They don't make fighting games anymore. They just they haven't for a long time. I think Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown came out, I want to say 2020, 19, somewhere around there. And that was like the last iteration of Virtua Fighter that we've seen. Many rumors of a Virtua Fighter compilation coming out. I think I mentioned on the show, in the newest version of Like a Dragon, they actually ported Virtua Fighter 3, the arcade version, on Model 3 hardware. That was the first time that's ever been done. It came out on Dreamcast. Not a great game. It's not a great game in general. Virtua Fighter 3 isn't the best Virtua Fighter. But it's just fun that you can actually play the arcade version for the first time ever. But back to the Saturn, we are going to play Fighters Megamix. Man, what a doozy. One of my all-time favorite fighting games. The character roster in this thing is insane. And it's one of the first non-SNK fighting game mashups. So you have the entire cast of Virtua Fighter, you have the entire cast of Fighting Vipers, which was another big Sega fighting property at the time on the Saturn and in the arcades. And then you have some other random Sega characters that were thrown in for good measure. And this game holds up, I think, really well today. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary if you think old 3D graphics look like dog shit, and I mean, it's hard to fight that or argue against that notion. But for those of us that find them endearing, or at least at a minimum can stomach them, I think this game holds up really well. It's a solid 60 frames a second. The frame rate doesn't ever really seem to hiccup unless you bash somebody through a wall, a la Fighting Vipers. But yeah, this one, it's great. So we're going to kind of walk through the features of the game. I'm going to show off the roster, and then we're going to play a little bit, and then I'll come back with some closing comments. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn on the sound to the game, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to show up right here in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So here we go. Let's push start and get going. So, okay, here's our mode select menu. So you have first player mode, which is obviously like an arcade mode. You've got survival mode, versus 2-player, team battle, which in a game that has such a huge roster, a team battle mode is really, really fun. Because you can, have Rent a Hero and Lau fight against the Daytona car and a palm tree. More on that in a minute. Then you got your training mode. Training mode rules because it's like another side thing that you can do. It doesn't work with the hidden characters, which is a shame. But with all the main Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers characters, you can play this mode. And maybe I'll sample that in a little bit. But it'll show you exactly... And to me, this feature is really ahead of its time for console fighting games. Well, fighting games in general. But you can actually see the moves, and then you can have the computer demo the moves. So you kind of get a better understanding of the timing of how these things are done. If anyone obviously is familiar with arcade fighting games from Sega, there's not a lot of Street Fighter motions. It's more tapping, more like punch, 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 kick, or tap, forward, forward, punch, that kind of stuff. Let's go over here real quick to the options menu and then go down to extra options because I want to go over some of the unlockables. So I don't have everything unlocked here. And to be honest, I have never had everything unlocked in this game. These question marks, I don't know what they are. I could probably Google that, and I'm sure I have in the past, I just don't remember off the top of my head, but they are not here. If you go down to Bookkeep, it's going to show you how much time has been put into this game, and that's important to unlock the some of the hidden characters. So playtime 88 hours. That's not straight 88 hours of gameplay. In this particular save, which was done by a very close friend, and he was doing true justice work here. He would just turn the system on and let it run, because you have to get 80 hours of gameplay to unlock the AM2 palm tree, which is one of the just wildest hidden characters in any fighting game ever, in my opinion. So power on this has been powered on 57 times, 238 fights. That one I think is legit because, again, I've played this game so many freaking times, as have some of my fellow Sega pervert friends. Only one character all clear, meaning I beat every single first player mode with that one character. And I'm going to guess I did it with Kuma-chan just because it says versus number 1 used. But I don't know. Oh, maybe down there it says Sarah. Maybe that's the favorite character. Let's see. If I move myself over here, well, it just says Sarah. So, oh, that's under all clear. Okay, so yeah, Sarah was probably the only character, which makes sense because my friend who did this save, that's his main character, is Sarah. So, and we were able to share the save. If you don't know, you can do this on a Saru, I believe, but also in a 4M replay cartridge, you can copy the system saves, which are battery backed, and then back them up there, and then keep those alive and well. There's a lot of Saturn games where the saves are massively important in unlocking stuff. This is one of them. Another one of my favorites, Radiant Silvergun, is another. Okay, so let's go back. I believe we can back out of here like this, and we'll do this, and exit one more time. So let's get into it. Apologies if this stick is too clicky. It is what it is. Maybe you're soothed by micro switches. I know I am, because I'm a little different. Not good different, bad different. Here we go, one player mode. And I'm just gonna pick, let's just start it off wild. So once you have all those hours of gameplay, you highlight Kuma-chan, you push the Z button, and let's just do novice so I can whip some dudes here. And then I'm gonna do this over here, make the screen big for me. Okay, so there you have it. I am a palm tree. Yep, I am a anthropomorphic palm tree coming out of a pile of sand. That's the AM2 logo. People who grew up with Sega arcade games like Daytona, Virtua Fighter, even my beloved Shenmue, you would see this logo. AM2 was one of Sega's premier in-house development studios, headed up by Yu Suzuki, who gave the world Space Harrier, Outrun, Virtua Fighter, Shenmue, many other games. He's kind of killing it right now. I just picked up Air Twister after a little bit of a delay of not trying that game, which is like his Yu Suzuki's spiritual successor to Space Harrier. And man, do I love that game. The soundtrack is done by this group called Valencia out of, I want to say, the Netherlands. It's either the Netherlands or Denmark. But anyway, they are just a Queen knockoff band. So if you like the musical stylings of the band Queen, that alone makes Air Twister worth your time. But it's a really fun rail shooter, and they don't make rail shooters anymore, and it's made by the guy who kind of invented that genre. Okay, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the fighting here. And so right there, I just blew up that man's vest. That's the Fighting Viper's difference. In the top part of the screens, you see the little, next to the life bars, there are these, like, looks like mannequin statue type things, and his is blinking red. That is because I bashed his armor off, makes him a little weaker in the upper body region. Still losing though, because turns out talking and playing Fighters Megamix don't mix well. And I'm about to lose, which is fine, because we'll continue. Oh, I'm gonna pull it out. Yes, take that, you bozo. Okay, so the AM2 palm tree, let's talk about the balance in this game. There kind of is none, and that's the fun. This isn't like a real deal competitive EVO level fighting game, nor should it ever be. It really is more of like a party game. It's like a party fighting game. I'll go back to the character roster select screen, or yeah, the character select screen in a second here to show off that roster, and we'll kind of go over all the characters that are in the game. But I wanted to start with the palm tree first because he is the hardest character to unlock. So in this level, you can see there's no walls. That's the Virtua Fighter difference. So this game, in this mode, which is the A list, the novice list, it goes back and forth between Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers backgrounds. The Virtua Fighter is kind of famous for having ring outs. In this game, there are no ring outs, but there's also no walls from Fighting Vipers. So it's just, you can kind of run forever and ever and ever, which is kind of fun because you can troll your friends when you're playing and play like a jerk and run away constantly. So every time you knock someone down in a Virtua Fighter game, if you don't push up and punch, you're leaving money on the table. That is what I like to call capitalizing, and it is essential. It is absolutely essential in Virtua Fighter type games to get that last little bit of life like that. Oh, missed. She's good. I mean, how ridiculous is this? I'm fighting as a stupid palm tree with coconuts on it. It's great, and his moves are, they incorporate the design of this stupid character so well. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the character select menu. So I'm gonna push A, B, and C and start, which that's kind of a Saturn difference thing right there. The fact that you could do a soft reset from your controller. N64 didn't do that, and I think probably PlayStation did, but N64 didn't do that, so that is what it is. So let's go back to one-player mode, and let's take a look at this character select screen, and we'll kind of go over everything. So up here, you have your Virtua Fighter characters. As you can see, Akira, Pai, Lau, Wolf, and then you got Jackie, Sarah, Cage, Jeffrey, Shun, and Lion were added into Virtua Fighter 2. Then you have Dural, which is the boss. And then here's Siba. So Siba, or Siba, don't know how they pronounce it. He's pretty unique. He was actually, if you remember, the original Virtua Fighter arcade marquee, they had this guy, this Arabic, Middle Eastern looking fella on the marquee, but he was nowhere in the game. So he was actually a Virtua Fighter character that didn't make the cut. And I don't know the full story as to why he didn't make it. Maybe it was limitations of memory, or maybe they just needed the game out in time and they couldn't finish it up. And there was never any follow-up. They made a Virtua Fighter remix where they easily could have put this character in the game and they didn't. So it's kind of interesting. He's here for the first time. And then down here you've got Kids Akira, and you have Kids Sarah. They're from Virtua Fighter Kids. It's Virtua Fighter 2 that's super deformed. So they're adorable and have big dumb heads. You got Bean from Sonic the Fighters. You got Bark from Sonic the Fighters, which maybe I'll play because it is just such an outrageous game. It is a Sega-made Sonic the Hedgehog fighting game, which, I mean, need I say more? It's just really, really out there and weird, but also fun. It's actually one of the few, mid to late 90s Sonic things that's actually worth your time, in my opinion. Okay, so here's Janet. She's from Virtua Cop. I'll go up. This is Rent-A-Hero. Rent-A-Hero is a pretty unknown Sega game where and it's funny. It's like really well written and funny, but there's a Genesis version and a Dreamcast version. And you go around and you solve people's problems. And you do it as like a super campy superhero. Up here you got your Fighting Vipers cast. You've got Gracie, Bon, Raxel, my favorite, because he's got a disgusting Ricky Morton mullet and he fights with a flying V guitar. I'll pick him next just to show him off a little bit. Tokyo, Picky, Candy. Then you got the boss characters from Fighting Vipers. BM, you know what I mean? BM is his name. Draw your own conclusions. And then you got Mahler there. So those are the two bosses from Fighting Vipers. Now down here is Deku. He's a weird one. I'll pick him just to show him off. He is like a green lima bean character in a sombrero, and he fights with maracas. No idea where he comes from. He's just really weird. Then you have Hornet. That's right. The Daytona car is a fighting character. Hornet sucks so bad in this game. You will lose if you pick him or her. We don't know because it's a fucking car. But yeah, just the fact that they did that it deserves all the credit in the world. And then you got Urabon, who is like a souped-up version of the Fighting Vipers fighter. Okay, so I'm going to show off Raxel first because he's probably my favorite character to pick overall in the game. He's devastatingly strong. And then I'll fight around with Raxel, and then I'll show off some more of the weirdo hidden characters, and then we'll wrap up the deal here with my thoughts on this wonderful game. So let's fight let's fight against the Virtua Fighters. Yeah, going back to Virtua Fighter, man, do I miss it. I think a lot of people miss it. Really wish they would make a new, at a minimum, make a compilation, because there's enough games out there that they could. But yeah, it'd be great to see an all-new Virtua Fighter. You know, Tekken's on number 8, guys. Just saying. Okay, so, all right. I'm going to launch him into the air with this move, if I can catch it. And then I'm going to bop him. I'm going to bop him a few times on the way down. And bop, 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 boom. So yeah, Raxel has really easy air juggling. Air juggling, still around today in the Tekken series, but man, in the 90s, thanks to Mortal Kombat 2, really, juggling really became the thing to do in fighting games. Street Fighter always had it, and SNK fighting games always had like their conventional combo systems, which evolved over time. But juggling is another beast entirely, and it's, dare I say, even more satisfying than traditional combos, because it's so mean to do to other players. If you're good at it, and you keep them in the air for very long periods of time, it becomes the most frustrating thing ever, which is really, really fun. Okay, so almost done with Lau here. Bash him, bop, 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 KO. So that's Raxel. Look at him. He looks like he's just straight off of a European tour, just zooted and tooted to the gills with a beautiful mullet. So, okay, let's go back to the character select screen one more time, maybe a couple more times, and I'll show off some of these other weirdo characters. Let's start with the other hard to unlock character. His name is Niku. So you highlight Kuma-chan. I believe you've got to fight, you have to win 35 matches to unlock him. Could be wrong on that, but, you know, Google it. But once you do that, you highlight Kuma-chan, you push the X button, and he becomes selectable. Let's go against the Vipers on this one. Okay. So I'm actually playing this on a CD. That's why the loading is a little slow. Some of these Saturn games I'm going to play, the loading is zippy. So here you go. Mr. Meat is his name in English. And he is a piece of Golden Axe meat with Rayman-like feet and fists. Just as ridiculous as you can get. And that's the Fighters Megamix difference, is like, it didn't take itself seriously. Virtua Fighter, almost to a fault, for some people, not for me. I love Virtua Fighter. But for some people, I think Tekken kind of ran away with 3D fighting games because it had a lot more personality and character, whereas Virtua Fighter was very, almost stuffy. If I could make a comparison, like Tekken is like Cruisin' USA, and Virtua Fighter is like Gran Turismo. Both are great, but one takes itself really seriously and the other is kind of more fun. But I love them both. I absolutely love Tekken and Virtua Fighter. But obviously Tekken has kind of run away and become the standard bearer for 3D fighting games. You can't understate at all how popular 3D fighting games were on the 32-bit systems, except for the N64, where it had absolute garbage fighting games. Just the worst fighting games on that system. Even the ones that are good suck. Smash Brothers is great, but I'm one of those people that I think Smash is like a different thing. It's not a fighting game. It is whatever you want to call Smash. It's a Smash game, it's an arena fighting game, it's a party game, but it ain't a fighting game. Looks like one, smells like one, but it ain't one. Okay. Picky, your days are numbered, as I bash you with this cartoon meat. Let's just reset it now. I want to show more of these weirdo characters off. I won't show them all off because it's going to take 3 hours, because I just get so lost in the sauce with this wonderful game. But I'll show you. I have to show you Hornet, just because of the absurdity, the true absurdity of it. Let's just go Virtua Fighter again. And yep, here he comes. It is just the Daytona car. And he kicks and punches with his tires, as you would, and you can run over. Oh, I think it's back forward punch is how to run over. Let's see if I can do it. Yeah, the downside to him is that he just sucks. Is so stupid and silly that it's not a competitive thing. But again, you know, Fighters Megamix is not it's not really all that competitive. It's just fun. And that's, I think, the thing I love about it the most is that it's just a really fun, good time. Yeah. So that's the punches. Those are the kicks. And I can't... There we go. Oh, almost did it. I guess it's forward, forward punch. Boom. I ran you over. Take that, you idiot. So yeah, I remember reading about this in GamePro and looking at screenshots and just being flabbergasted at the sheer audacity of Sega to put the Daytona car in a fighting game. Just wild. Wild, wild, wild shit. Okay, and... he just sucks, though. That's the problem. Imagine if the Daytona car was silly and weird, but also good to play as. I mean, but that'd be too much. It'd be too powerful. Too much for a Sega pervert to be able to contend with. Okay. Yeah. Just a fun little joke, but a terrible, terrible fighter. All right, let's do two more. And I'll do like a round apiece. Maybe three more. I do kind of want to show off one of the Sonic fighter characters. Let's do Kuma-chan. Kuma-chan is not... This one is available right out of the box. Again, I think he was a background statue in a Fighting Vipers game. Just like a statue in the background, and they made him a fighter. Really broke the bank with animation on him, as you can clearly see. He's devastatingly strong, though, which is kind of funny. And again, goes back to how imbalanced this wonderful game is. So this is the infamous Kuma-chan death roll, where I'm just pushing the Z button over and over and over, and he just spins and kills. Spins and kills. It's really wonderful. Super hard to block against, even if you know what you're doing. But yeah, what a wonderfully stupid thing. Kuma-chan, there you go. All right, let's go back. I'll show you a Sonic fighter. My preference there is Bean, because Bean throws bombs. Because why wouldn't Bean throw bombs? All right, here we are. And let's go down here. Let's pick Dirty Fighters. Because who doesn't like a cheating heel? Okay. So yeah, Sonic the Fighters came out in the arcade on, I believe, on Model 2 hardware, which is the Virtua Fighter 2 board. And then it came out in Japan only on the Sega Saturn. It did come out in America eventually in the Sonic Gems collection for GameCube. I believe that was GameCube exclusive. That one had Sonic the Fighters, the arcade version. It had Sonic R based on the PC version, and then it had Sonic CD. Which right there, that's kind of a triforce of like good, weird, unique Sonic games. Some of my personal favorites. I think Sonic R, especially with that music, is so good. It's a shame that it is like a half hour long. That game is criminally short. And boom, throwing bombs, Bean style. All right, here we go. So not bad either on the character models. I mean, obviously everything's low poly. This is a Sega Saturn game, but like you can see the character, like the personality in Bean's model. I think they really did a good job with that game. Also would have loved to have been in that boardroom about pitching it. Like, hey, you guys like Sonic? You guys like Virtua Fighter, right? Well, we here at Sega love money, so let's mash those two things together and see what happens. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of money. That did not happen. But it's a cult favorite amongst the Sega faithful. Yeah! Okay. Eat bombs, stupid. See if I can bash some of his armor off. Look at that headbutt. I mean, if you saw a 7-foot-tall duck with a huge head doing that towards you, you would run. You would run in terror. There's no two ways about that. Let's see if we can finish this fight off with a W. Oh, fell right on his duck ass. Okay. Come on. Get the W. Almost there. Boom. And, oh, we blew up his vest and we kicked him through a wall. That's how you do it. Okay, let's show off one more fighter from this incredibly eclectic and super fun roster of fighters in Fighters Megamix. Let's show... I kind of want to show... Okay, let's do Seba, because I kind of talked him up a little bit. It is one of the more, from a historical standpoint, one of the more interesting characters in the game. Because it was an omitted Virtua Fighter 1 character who you can see on the marquee art. And he fights with a sword. Maybe that's why he got cut. The other Virtua Fighters were like, no, we don't have swords, and he does. I'm just going to murder Lau with the sword over and over again. And we're going to get it perfect with this one. Oh! Spoke a little too soon. And stomp him. Capitalize the Virtua Fighter difference. Alright. Punch, punch. That's what PPK does. Murder. We gotta keep stabbing, because that's... I mean, Virtua Fighter not known as a weapons-based fighting game, obviously. Just doing great work there. Booyah. Okay. So this is Fighters Megamix. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. And let's do that. Okay. So, I fucking love that game. I can't say enough good things about it. If you want to say anything negative about it, it would be that like it's too fun. It will occupy too much of your time. That and it's like, a lot of people don't like Sega Saturn games. So I guess that's a negative too. But for me, everything about it is a positive. It is one of, if you're going to get into Sega Saturn collecting because you hate your money and you have some sort of sickness, it's actually one of the really good Sega Saturn games that you can buy for like under $100, which is, saying something. Sega Saturn, I used to have a decent sized Sega Saturn collection in like the early 2000s because you couldn't give that shit away. No, Sega Saturn was a monster failure in the United States, and there's no two ways about it. Sega couldn't wait to get away from it and start the Dreamcast era because of how much of a failure it was. In Japan, different story. Saturn was massively popular and beloved, and to this day beloved in Japan. And if you look at the libraries, the Japanese Sega Saturn library is amazing. The US library has amazing games in it, but it also has a lot of dog shit in it. So if you got into Sega Saturn and you wanted to collect real games, the Japanese one is the way to go. A lot of those games don't require a lot of knowledge of the language, especially like arcade games, fighting games, shooters, all that good stuff. There's a lot of stuff that does, JRPGs and what have you. But we live in a magical time where you can get something like a Saru or like a Mode or Satiate or all these different devices. And not only can you play the whole global library of the Saturn, but there's a lot of people out there that are doing really good work translating Japanese games that were never available to us. I might show some of those off during Saturnmania. We'll see. But yeah, it's a really cool system to get into now. The hardware is still relatively inexpensive. So if you did that and then went to other means to find your games versus spending hundreds of dollars on CDs, that is an avenue that is available to us now in 2024, which is cool. But in closing, Fighters Megamix, man, it's gotta be in my top 3 Sega Saturn games of all time. I haven't really figured that list out in my head, and competing for number 1 is hard. But it's in definitely top 5. Like there's no question about it. It's in my top 5, if not in the top 3. But I love that game. I will always love it. Really fun to play with friends. Friends who don't give a shit about fighting games can pick it up and play, and friends who are really obsessed with fighting games can also find, things to master in that game. It's not balanced at all, but that's part of the fun, and discovering how imbalanced it is a good time in and of itself. So, Fighters Megamix gets I'm gonna give it. Let's see, what's a good rating here? I'm gonna give it 10 out of 10 stupid button switchy things on a joystick. It really occupies all of those, and it is worth that high of a rating. So I'm going to come back with more Sega Saturn love because I am on a Sega Saturn kick, and there's more to say about this wonderful, underlooked, and certainly underutilized Sega system. So thank you so much for watching. We're on Spotify. Please like, subscribe, leave comments, offer suggestions, all those fun things. And I will return with more love for the Sega Saturn.